Hello, welcome to this episode of the Progressive MS webinar series. This was meant to be the last one in the series, but unfortunately, Jonathan had a medical appointment and he was unavoidable. He had to not attend. So that episode that was missed was the relationship episode, and we're going to have that in January on the 16th at the same time. So Jonathan, welcome. And thank you very much. And how are you feeling?
Good. I had a partial bisection of my tongue because I found something ominous. And it's actually very appropriate that we're doing this webinar and seeking and attaining vitality, because I'm on my own journey with that since the discovery of something by the dentist back at the end of holidays in August. And then the path I've been on and will continue on for the rest of my life with ongoing appointments to make sure I'm safe. So it's really, I've had to, get lost and then come back and remind myself I know what to do here and to tailor to myself.
And this is really interesting about this whole concept of trying to get back our vitality, or to reinvent ourselves in a way to get that purpose in life. And that's what this episode is all about. And at the very beginning, when we were putting together the schedule for this, I felt, and the team felt, that one of the important things in regaining that vitality is having enough tools at your disposal to give you those supports. And that's why we spoke to occupational therapists, physiotherapists. We spoke to you, Jonathan, a lot about the psychological aspect of having a chronic illness, and also about research on into the future. When we were putting together kind of the game plan for this webinar, there was a couple of things that I thought maybe we should discuss. So the first thing is, why is having a role or a purpose in life actually important?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit like sometimes when I work with people or myself and ask myself, what direction am I going in, or what direction are you going in? We know from studies of people in Harvard who did masters in business administration that the 3% of people who had a map, a vision, a vista of where they're going when they asked at the start of their masters, those people made more than the other 97% of people in money 20 years later, because they had a map and a vision. So we know from when we look at very highly intelligent people doing a master's in Harvard, that if you have a map, it's advantageous to you. But when we get lost in an illness or the fear of the illness, you can forget where you are on the map. And you can actually initially shut down and take to the bed, or just stop at all the activities that used to give you vitality, and then feel a bit lost. And what happens then in the context of that is your memory, concentration goes, and the sense of starting off, the momentum of getting from bed into your life, entering life, it's more difficult. And because it's more difficult, it's easier to avoid it. And if you avoid it, then you feel relief. So you get in this kind of pattern of staying away from a map. But if we have a map, and if we tell ourselves, well, there are 3 things that give me vitality. For example, with me, it's going to a rugby game, doing sessions with clients, the psychological sessions, eating out in fine restaurants maybe 2 or 3 times a year, where I plan it all, and I can't afford to go to too many. But it's, if I go 3 times a year to a really good restaurant, that will suffice for me, rather than going every week. But then I have to think about how much energy I have for that roadmap. Can I get from here to the place? And that's, suppose we've been talking in the webinar series, that's really important here. I would be naturally, if I get into a shock place, I go into the flop response. I take to the bed, or go for a massage. And the worst things I should be doing for myself, I should be getting myself into action. Whereas other people will go into action and ruin all the reserves of energy, and actually go below the reserve of energy and end up completely in a boom bust cycle. So when I work with people in groups, we often put the boom busters in a group, and we put the floppers in a group. And it's to decide where you are, and both result in the kind of, it's like the tortoise and the hare with MS, and they both end up in the same situation. They never end the race.
And I have been through this process, I don't know how many times myself,
yeah.
where I have felt that my illness has robbed me of so much of what I
Yeah.
used to be.
Yeah.
The Robert that was able to go for a long walk, or the Robert that was able to stay out late at night, or even attend, go to a pub even.
Yeah.
And I just can't do those things anymore. And it is really, it sucks the life out of you when you start looking at the way you once were.
Yeah.
And I have spent those days in a darkened room and in tears
Yeah.
because of the Robert that I've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard at that point to understand what you can contribute or how you can be of value, to live a life. And I have found that really, really challenging when those times come. What do I do and how do I react to it? Because I'm hopeless. I feel there's no light in the future.
Yeah.
And that's I suppose the negative effect of not having that focus or that thing that gives you that vitality. And what's going on in your body when you feel that vitality? What is that, a physiological thing? Is it a mental thing? How does that work?
I suppose to get into the place where we have vitality, first of all, you need your fear system to switch off. If I go to chapter 1 and have that one of 3 dinners in a year, but I'm highly anxious, that I'm wanting to go to the bathroom to urinate, I'm not going to enjoy that one time in 3 in the year. And so we have to regulate our fear system, our anxiety system, before we can engage in our kind of interest sharing, and also our sexuality and things that give us energy. And often if we're doing things which we enjoy, we get a bit of mojo going, and suddenly we become more attractive to others and feel more attractive. So they're all kind of interconnected systems. So for example, I get great energy from working with people about their journey, the map they're on, and how to overcome obstacles. But when I came back after the illness, I went to a clinic and I had the usual 4 or 5 people booked in an afternoon. And I really had such vitality after, so I was delighted. But the next 3 days I was wiped out. I literally couldn't, I wasn't Jonathan anymore. There was something happened. And then I had to remind myself and be gentle to myself, go, wait a minute, you're now a person suffering from a kind of a chronic condition that needs to be monitored. You could have died if they hadn't caught it earlier. What do you tell clients to do? And I went, oh, what I do is I tell them to get the average of the number of clients you'd see going across when you're okay. And so let's say 3 sessions. One day I saw 4 clients in the afternoon, the next I saw 3, and the next I saw 5. So it's 5 plus 3 plus 4. So it's 8, it's 12. Divide that by 3 is 4. And then this is the key, divide that in 2. You get the average and divide it in 2. So I said, let's try it. So the next 3 weeks I've been paying the rent, but I've been having fun. I've been seeing 2 clients. And what you do then slowly is you build up. And that's the thing that really people find difficulty, particularly if you're a boomer, if you're a person with MS, and when you suddenly get a little bit of energy, or the MS, the symptoms have gone away, you've got a window opportunity, you see it, you try and do everything that day, and you end up completely wrecked for the week or 3 or 4 days afterwards. Whereas because I'm so excited going to meet clients to do work, I have to hold myself back to 2 and just enjoy the 2 and get the vitality without. It's like having a new battery in the first electric car. You have to really be very careful with the battery.
And this is interesting because you've decreased your workload down to half of what it was before. How do you overcome that feeling that you're half the person you were before? And this is, I know I go through that myself, is how do you rationalize to yourself that this is the process that you're going through to build yourself up to eventually getting back to the 4 again?
One part is being honest with yourself and myself and with people. So I've been approached, once you're back in work, people say you're back in work. Whereas I now have a script where I say, I'm back in work, but I'm not really. I'm at about 45% of my previous capacity. I can't take that on, I'm sorry. Okay. And what we do in Ireland is we undo it. We come back later and go, I hope you don't mind me saying I'm sorry, and do this undoing where we take away our assertion. But now because I know I've only got a certain quantum of energy, I have to say, I cannot do it. and don't add anything. Just make the statement, my levels of vitality are much lower since my illness. I can only do so much, and I can't do that. It's like the Meatloaf song.
And that is the problem, you know. And I know I have that issue too, where I take on much more than I should sometimes, and I pay the price. And learning to say no is very difficult. And I'm just wondering, the people who are listening here today, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Jonathan or me about how it affects you and the challenges that you're facing, and we can go through that here in this webinar. And I think that's when we talk about tangible examples, it makes it more real. And I know I have had to totally change the structure of my life, because I don't, and I was speaking to people about this recently, I don't, because of my MS, live in the same rule set. I'm not playing the same game as the general population.
No.
And once I came to the realization that I have to live by a different set of rules and adapt to those rules, then it becomes an awful lot easier.
Yeah.
And learning to say no, for an Irish person, that can be particularly difficult. And is there any tips that you can give us on that challenging 2-letter word?
I have a pull-out underneath my desk here, a pull-out lie-down couch, which I will use, say, mindful. Twice a day I have a body scan instead of, which is really unusual. If you go, so someone walks in my office, the door's open, they'll find me lying down with my hands like this doing a body scan, because I'm trying to really regulate the energy cells within me and the vitality. So you have to treat yourself as a different entity now. I'm not the same Jonathan prior to the illness than now. My fear system is over. I'm jumpy. If people say hello to me, I jump. So it's really about, prioritizing your external environment so it's as supportive as it can possibly be for you, and finishing a sentence with a full stop, and not entering into a place of submission or demeaning yourself and thinking that you're any less of a person because of the condition you have. It's a condition that comes with you. It's not me. It's not you, but it is something that limits my vitality. The difficulty that people get into, Robert, is that is we start to move away from the things that we can plug into that do give us vitality. And by doing those things, maybe not to the same quantum. So if I go out socially now, I went out and met friends in Dublin, and I went out from 6 till like 9:30. Whereas before I would have been out till 2 a.m. with them, having the chat, catching up on the boys from college and stuff. And I just said, but I really had great enjoyment there. And also I didn't wake up with any hangover, or the benefits of that. Didn't have the rubbish talk that happens after 9 o'clock. But I'm still, so if it's invited to a wedding, I'd do the same, and I'd go up and have a sleep, but I'd be very clear, I have a certain amount of energy, and just don't add any comment on to after that. I need to go for a nap now. I need to leave you. It was great to see you, even if it's for half an hour for a coffee. Also, I recognize that meeting people is really important. People with similar interests. When we talk, we get energy and vitality from it, but I can't do it for longer because it hurts my tongue from talking too long. And so I will meet people for lunch now regularly, where I didn't before. I didn't leave time in work to have to go and spend the hour meeting for half an hour or 45 minutes, having a talk. And when we meet someone's eyes who cares about you and gets you, it actually makes you feel more human and less dehumanized. And particularly for people with chronic progressive MS, you can get to that place of feeling dehumanized and not being met as a person.
And that's a real possible block now with COVID. And okay, things are opening up, hopefully, and they're going to maintain a little bit better, but we still have that obstacle. And particularly depending on the medication that you're taking for MS, you are a vulnerable people. And like, I'm going for my booster shot on Friday.
Wow.
And I know that gives me a little bit more confidence in meeting, but I meet very few people on a day-to-day basis. And if you need individuals to give you that vitality, you're isolating. How do you get that back again?
Yeah, it's really important. It's about, I suppose it's about getting. I'm not mad in the external environment in like woods and things, but I need to walk because I flop if I don't get energy that way, keep exercise going. But I do arrange to meet friends now to walk and have a chat for 20 minutes or whatever, half an hour, building up my resilience. So there's something about doing the things in smaller doses in safe situations. There is the fear thing with the drugs and different things. Whenever you take is it okay to take a vaccine during a flare of, when you're having, and probably not. They probably recommend that you wait till another time. So there is the advice we need to have a look at, to both get access to safety and not. One thing I've noticed, particularly when we're talking about what can you do with whatever condition we have, is not to be on the Twitter or the LinkedIn or the news feeds. That's one thing I learned from what I had, is I go to nature now if I want to learn about the COVID-19. So I go to a very reputable area. And when I went about the kind of cancerous thing, and that I went to the medical journals, like to look for the information there, and not any news things. Because every 5 minutes I was saying, oh, this treatment will work better, and if you take vitamin this, and if you take this, and suddenly I found myself going into, for the first time ever, to this shop that I don't know, it's called Green something. I'm buying all these supplements, which 90% was being just urinated out an hour or so later and costing me a fortune. So it's really about being discerning about where you need to go with information, because if you see the effect it has on your stress system and your energy system by having constant updates and feeds, makes you go and then down, because you go and check it afterwards, and you'll get lots of energy, excitement, and then realize, oh, this is just, they've only done rats, and it will take 15 years before any treatment will come through. Another thing, though, from working with some friends who've gone through a kind of MS experience recently, without mentioning names, or having kind of narcolepsy or something that's similar, which affects fatigue, is to not shame yourself if you're taking something like a memantine or taking a stimulant, which will help your levels of concentration and focus. I know some people I've talked to get into a shame position of that. Don't feel ashamed. This is something that can facilitate you if it works for you, and that we really have to tailor interventions for ourselves, and tailor. Do you have any questions about that, Robert? Or you have a...
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to take modafinil all the time for extra energy, and it led to me becoming over dependent on it, and it was, and then you don't sleep properly, so you go through this again, a boom and bust cycle, and I found it difficult personally, as a result of over reliance on these medications, though there are times when you need them. So for example, I'm now trying a new bladder tablet to help me with my bladder, and I have to go through the whole processing of that, and this has an impact on my everyday, because I don't have the same freedom that I had, well, thought I had before I started taking the medication, because I was blocking doing things because of my bladder. And this kind of restricts your life in a way the medication does, and doesn't allow you to perform those functions that you wanted to do. And I'm just looking here, Jonathan, there's 2 questions up on the Q&A. The first one is from Kathleen, and she says she suffers with shock-like pain and it affects her talk. Okay. And the second one from Eileen, faced with decisions of whether to retire and lose much of her identity, or return to work and likely enter a boom and bust cycle. So this is again.
Well, that's really interesting, because she's almost imagining herself getting into the boom and bust cycle, and that's something like I had to go through, and you've had to go through, Robert, where we've had to really pull the reins in and pace ourselves very in exact amounts. Otherwise, we'd get into the boom or bust cycle. So it's about, and I've done that coming back to work in the university, because the university can hook you in, and you can be, your soul can be lost and sold to the devil. So it's been very strict, and it's hard, because when I get excited and you get excited, Robert, we're both very curious people and get excited by ideas and interacting, but we have to almost, like someone with diabetes, really monitor the amount of sugar or fun bits we give ourselves, so that we can can work effectively over longer periods, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's what I would advise. And it's really hard. It's so difficult. It's because your natural curiosity and natural intention and your natural drive, you have to rein it in. It's like having to, if you've got a blender and you learn that your blender is one of the old ones from the 70s, you have to go little jolts of it, otherwise you'll burn out the engine very quickly.
Kathleen is just after adding an extra bit about stress and anger, bringing it on, and then she does mind over matter. And when I was thinking about this webinar before, that is something that there are times when I take on more than I can do. So my week, I can do 10 hours of activity in a week, and I have to spread it over the week. But there are days when I push that envelope a bit, and I know I'm going to pay, but it's, and I encounter something that causes me to be angry about it because I'm tired and fatigued, and that makes me more angry. And then I have to kind of withdraw. And it's a bit like what you were saying earlier about you taking out your mat, lying them down and doing your body mapping thing, which I find very useful. I actually do a kind of a mini one of, you know, kind of like maybe a 30-second one.
Wow.
Okay. Where I'm in the middle of a meeting and I pull back, focus on the breath and forget about what's going on for a bit. And that seems to regulate me back again. But I've had to learn that, and I've had to accept that there are times, like you said earlier, that you have to say no, that I cannot continue with this, or I need to stop now. How do you give yourself the permission even to change your behavior in such a dramatic way?
Well, Creed 2, the movie, there's a beautiful scene where the coach comes over and he's sparring, and the coach says, you know who you're really in a battle with? And he says, yeah, this guy I'm fighting on Saturday night. He goes, no, you're in a battle with yourself. That you need to have the fight out with yourself and to come to some kind of agreement with that the old Robert, the old Jonathan. And it's very sad. It's a very emotional, it's a big loss. It's the grief out and the sadness out, and the feeling that of I am, you know, because if you're like you and I, when we see something, we want to go and do it. We're like puppies. We're like King Charles. We want to go out and just do it. And we have to be really avuncular to ourselves and go, no, come here, Jonathan. Look, you know what the consequences of this are. If you want to, you can go and do it, but really think about it. So you have to really both go through the loss, split yourself and sit with the sadness, or talk to somebody else about the sadness of losing your old self, but also to be avuncular, is that the word, with yourself, to grab yourself, do the Dutch uncle, and to calm yourself. Frustration is the big one, because if you're a boom buster, if you love to do lots of activities, you're going to have to manage the negative urgency that people have when they want to do something now and get it done. It's almost like when you're doing a task and 4 or 5 things get in the way and people just go, they get into such an angst. It's about almost being gentle with yourself and saying, slow down, Jonathan, remember the plan, stick to the plan. That's enough, you know, that bit, and being able to walk away. And yet you have to learn how to do that. It's really, can I ask you about, Rob, you doing that? Because I'm sure everyone will be interested to hear about that.
Say that again now.
The knowing that you've done enough and walking away, even though you're really in a process of enjoyment.
Yeah, and I had to encounter this many times. So I would be, say, at a meeting where where I've gotten my vitality is doing patient advocacy stuff. So whether it is with a pharmaceutical company or whether it's the HSE, sometimes these meetings go on way longer than I can tolerate. And there are times when I just put it in the text, I'm sorry, I have to go now. I've reached my limit.
Good.
And it took me a while to give myself the permission to do that, because I felt an obligation. I was there. They invited me to give my opinion, but I can't go past a certain limit because I know the cost to me later on is going to be too great. And I found these tricks then to kind of moderate that a little bit by doing those breathing exercises in the middle of a meeting. And I'm sure people are watching me and they're saying, God, he's spacing out a little bit, or, you know, going into a kind of a fugue state. But it really, really helps me.
Yeah.
And I would like people to understand that, you know, I know that when I push my limits, my pain levels go through the roof.
Yes.
Right? Absolutely. But I have almost, to the people that I'm meeting with, I've now said to them, I have a limit. Yeah. And this is my limit. Now, that took a lot for me to learn how to say. It's a bit like today I decided to apply for disability allowance, to accept the disability and say, this is my reality. Yeah. That was a really hard decision to make, as would be in this environment where you're trying to talk to other people. And Eileen is here with another comment, how to cope with the fact that saying no puts extra demands on other people. And I actually can understand that you feel that guilt that because of your situation. But I think you need to reorganize how your contribution is being given. And I think some time ago, you mentioned in one of our webinars about the golfer who couldn't golf anymore, or the rugby player who couldn't play rugby anymore, but went on to the coaching. And you need to look at yourself operating at a different type of level. You may not be able to do those physical activities, but you can still make a contribution in a different sense, learning how to do that. And so I'm just wondering, is there ways that you can maybe rationalize to yourself or be friendly to yourself in allowing yourself to change that behavior?
Yeah. So sometimes we find ourselves in anger, frustration. It could be that we haven't been able to accept the sadness of that we're different and changed now. So there might be, before we get into that next phase of being gentle to yourself in the new situation, that I'm a coach now and enjoying that and be able to really enjoy it's a longer term thing. You've seen somebody develop. And you might have to, if you're getting very frustrated and angry and kind of getting pain in your face or gritting your teeth or having difficulty sleeping, there's something, a stage you have to go through. And that's really painful. It's the sadness bit before you can move into the next phase of saying, this is the new me, and this is how I can, if I used to bake and be a chef, I can now become a mentor of people and guide them in their what I can't do anymore. If you lose a leg, it doesn't mean that you can't teach people to become vultures or jumpers or something. There's still the capacity there. And it's amazing that vicarious enjoyment is nearly, not the same, but it's nearly as equal to us as the actual doing it ourselves. And when you work with people I've worked with rugby players who they can't watch Ireland play anymore because or different teams, because they feel the sadness, the frustration and the whole body is saying, is acting, the muscle memory is acting out. But when they get to the phase of being a coach again or something, they come back in a much more mellowed and less angry and less angst place. And their concussion headaches go down and different things improve. Because when we're angry and not satisfied, and this isn't the deal, this life isn't what I wanted. This MS is not part of me. I never expected this. I didn't do anything wrong. There's the bit to the self of, you did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like in the Good Will Hunting movie, where the therapist, Robin Williams, goes, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. 3 times. And he goes, oh yeah, I know, yeah. So part of the therapy work I do with people with MS and other chronic conditions is that it's not your fault. Rob, this wasn't your fault. And they go, oh yeah, yeah. And I go, no, did you hear me? This is not your fault. And they go, yeah, okay, yeah. And you see the eyes glisten a bit and they go, no, just where do you feel that in your body? It's not your fault. And their lip starts to go and this big strong man just falls apart. It's beautiful. But they have to get to that place before they can, it's called a threshold moment, before they can get to the next, the snakes in the ladder, the next step on the journey.
Very interesting. It seems to be like there's a series of hurdles that you have to overcome, and give yourself permission to get to those hurdles and jump over them and address them. Just while we're continuing this conversation, Aoife or Aidan, if you could put up the poll, please, on just who is attending.
I love this bit of the webinar.
It's always nice to see where people are coming from and what kind of conditions they have. So we have the different types of MS that you might have, your location and your ages. So if you can do that for us, please. When you have an illness like MS, and this is the negative aspect of it, how do you overcome that negative? It's so easy. Like, as humans, we always focus on the bright light or the shining orb or the movement or the negative, and we seem to overemphasize that. How can we maybe turn that around? What type of hints or tips can you give us to actually turn that negative maybe into a positive?
Yeah. One thing is to notice if you're in the grip, right? If you're in the fear situation, if you're in threat, when we're in the grip with adrenaline racing through our body, we only have what's called dichotomous thinking, black or white. There's only two boxes: safety or danger, hope, failure. So you have to notice that's happening, and then when you notice it's happening, either with yourself or with a piece of paper, to write down, okay, what else might be going on here? And it's very hard until we calm ourselves down to become creative or productive in our thinking and to move away from safety versus danger. I'm a success as a person, or I'm a failure. These kind of dichotomous places. If I have MS, chronic MS, and it's progressive, it means I don't exist anymore as a human being. My value in this society is gone. If you start to move towards that, you'll start to see different information. Your information gathering system in your brain will only look for information that supports that idea, and can lead us to a very dark place. So we have to sit down. It's a bit like when I went through my own health scare there and an ongoing issue. I had to be very discerning in what information I let in to me, and to go to places to think about, okay, what else can I do in this situation that's beyond black and white, that's beyond yes or no, it's beyond failure or success. And it's a really difficult thing to do. You have to sit down and look at alternatives. What else can I see in the situation which is possible? What else could I do? It's like I worked with a woman who had MS, and she loved to swim, but she had vestibular, she had dizziness issues and stuff with her MS, as well as energy issues. And she had a new baby, and she said to me, I can't swim anymore. My MS has stopped me swimming. The only thing that gave me some, enjoyment in life was swimming. All my thoughts about stress would go away. And we ended up, because I had to calm her fear system down. It was all or nothing, no swimming. And in the end, we kind of meandered through it and discovered that there's about 15 different swimming pools in the Galway area. And that she went, her homework was to go with her husband and to check the 15 swimming pools, explain her situation, and find the one which would allow her with her MS to get into the pool without expending too much energy, that would have supports around the side of the pool that she could get in, and that she could then bring her new child into the pool with her. And when she did all those things and moved away from the idea of I have to swim if I'm in the swimming pool, that walking up and down the pool with my baby in my arms and holding them and having fun was good enough. It was remarkable. She came back and went, I'm back, I'm not swimming, but I'm back in the pool with my child who I'd given up that idea of. Isn't it amazing?
That is absolutely incredible. And I love the idea of, not really losing that which you thought that you had lost before.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Still there.
Those, that love that you have, you can do it in a different way, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, I'm just trying to see if I can find that poll, because it flashed up the results and I've lost it. Here we go. Right. Thank you. So roughly 50-50 with primary progressive and secondary progressive MS. There are 31% of people who don't have MS in this group. Mainly from Connacht, Leinster and Munster, pretty evenly divided. And we don't have anybody from outside of the country at the moment. And 38% of people are between 46 and 60, and 50% are older than 60 who are attending today. And that's interesting
Mm,
because the over 60 group are heading to what would have been naturally retirement.
yeah.
And I think that is possibly another group of people that once you retire, you can lose your vitality too.
Yeah.
You've lost what defined you, which was your work.
Hmm.
And now you have to find a new thing to do. And that brings us into the type of things that we can do on a daily basis that gives you back that vitality. So say you cannot work.
Yeah.
What do you do? Or is it a hobby, or is it a charity?
Mm.
What are good things to look towards for that vitality?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the lady who found the right swimming pool for her to support her. So it's about it's almost like it's like the flat Earth society. Then when we move towards retirement, people have an idea that we're going to fall off the end of the Earth and that everything finishes. So it's about planning. It's a bit like Roy Keane saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's planning and knowing the activities and be very discerning about the activities you enjoy and making sure you plan them within the week. And instead of thinking retirement, imagine that you've got a car and just changing the tires in it. You're putting a different terrain tires in it. But you have to plan that you've got similar things to what you enjoyed in work happening in your life after that. And that you don't really, that you either go still work half a day a week, still work a day a week, whether it's voluntary or whether you're receiving money for it. It's still about having that where you get your mojo from, where you get your vitality from, and the interest and the fun. Otherwise, we'll be coming back to our partners feeling like our energy is not there, not feeling particularly sexy, not feeling very attractive. There's something about doing something that you like and getting to the zone where time just disappears. That it's like a big breath of oxygen to us, of 90% oxygen that just really enlivens our whole system. And if we don't have that, we feel a bit stale.
And there's two different types of people then. You have the people who get their energy from other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are people who are more solitary in nature.
Yeah.
And then how do they get their,
Mm.
if you're used to being on your own all the time, and then you cannot do that stuff that you did before.
Yeah.
How do you do it on your own then? It's very solitary.
Yeah. So there's something about, if you're an introvert, allow yourself to be an introvert. If you go into a room of people who are all talking about shared interests, they'll all look like extroverts. They'll all be full of energy and movements and laughter. But an introvert is a person who needs to recharge on their own. An extrovert recharges by being around other people. I'm a mixture of introvert and extrovert. I really do need to connect with people and get a buzz of and get that type of energy. It's like I've got two cells. And I have a friend who's an introvert, and when she goes to supervision with her therapist, who looks at all the clients she's working with, she frustrates her supervisor because she's thought it all through, all her clients already, done the work on her own in a room. Whereas I don't do as much processing. I go in, I go blah, 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 and talk and do a lot of the processing with the therapist. So it's about being kind to yourself and saying, I'm the type of person who needs to recharge away from people. Whereas if we're in a hotel and it's an MS conference, and if I was there and we heard lots of laughter and a bit of music playing and some, guffaws, I'd be out of my bedroom trying to see if I can join in the fun. Whereas the introvert would be going, for goodness sake, call the lobby. Can they please be quiet? I am getting the plugs in.
I'm a little bit of that. I think I'm the introvert type. Okay. That I like my solitary activities. Though I suppose I do like the crowds every once in a while. We've got somebody here who's asked a question. Hi, I'm 70, live alone, and have MS since February 2000. I used to go social dancing, which is not on now, and this person lives in Mayo. Dancing, I can understand. Dancing is a really social activity. Yeah. And now, okay, having MS, having that difficulty, and not being able to dance, is there a way around that?
Well, my body started to move when you started talking about dancing. First of all, ask yourself, have you turned off the need for dancing? Have you avoided the radio? Have you avoided things where on your own they can start the dancing movement and get into it? And even if there's other people around, if there's kids that get into the movement and enjoy the dancing. Watch programs with dancing. Get onto if there's social Zoom sessions of dancing. I'm sure there are Zoom, and you have to pay a few euro, but I'm sure they're there. It's a bit like yoga is really good, and whatever is good for you. I can't do yoga because I'm a bit dyspraxic, and I end up making very strange noises. And I was asked to leave when we did pregnancy yoga with my wife. She said, "Please don't invite your husband back." But it's about because I think our love goes stale. And you think dancing is gone and there's no access to dancing, when actually there might be. And it might be starting off by dancing on your own, and then, or dancing with somebody in the kitchen, or then moving on to, okay, I'm sure there are dance classes on Zoom, and to explain that if you have a disability, that that you're not, it's not a disability, I'm not as able to do certain things, and just explain that, and to be very proud of that, and go, well, that's my limitation.
Yeah, and this is the reality of it. Like, there's a lot of things that I used to do that I can't do anymore. Yeah. And just being kind to yourself. Yeah. And like, one of the things that I used to be able to do really easy was spreadsheets. Oh. And I just can't do that anymore. Yeah. And when I tried to do, I was getting frustrated and annoyed. Yeah. That was it. But I still have that analytical brain.
The analytical brain, yeah.
So I've had to use that in a different way,
yeah.
Not in the way that I originally did, and so now when I attend meetings, I can piece together what people are saying and try to come up with maybe a novel solution. And that's where I get my vitality. Whereas before it was solving the problem on a piece of paper on the computer. Now I do it orally. So yeah. I've swapped it to a different environment, and it's to find that environment that works. Now we're getting very close to the end, Jonathan, again, which is, there's always so much to talk about. But one of the things that I know I have found challenging is you have found your vitality.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have found that thing that you enjoy, and it is adapted to your illness.
Yeah.
But then something else happens. And you cannot do it anymore. You cannot do that. And it's that continual knocking down that you think you have found your solution, and then you can't do it anymore. How do you keep bouncing back?
Yeah, that's really, because that's what we call shutdown and mobilization. It's when you've had too many hits and your body just goes, you feel in your body, I just can't do it anymore. I can't be let down again. Nothing's working out for me. The world is against me. You might, even if you're religious, might think God is punishing you. And with this situation there, you need other people to get yourself into movement, to get into approach behavior again. It's like if you're a soldier and you've got shell shock, you need someone literally to move you and get, come on, Robert, let's get moving. No, I'm grand, I'll stay here. And you're rocking, and you feel immobilized. And psychologically, when that happens to us, we become psychologically immobilized, and we need somebody to give us a hand. It's for people returning to work, when I advise them after maybe a bad part of the chronic illness, but they have a flare and they feel like they can't work again. I'll arrange them to find one colleague when they go to meetings or something, that they'll say to the colleague, Robert, can you sit across from me at the desk? So when I feel overwhelmed and I become disfluent, I can't find words, and I get brain fog, that I can look at you and calm and regulate myself, and then be gentle, because you have gentle eyes, then allow myself to come, or to halt and go, I'll come back to that. And so there's something about, we sometimes need others. And it could be, for example, what you said, the spreadsheets. You might say to somebody, look, I used to be able to do spreadsheets and I know them really well. However, my MS really gets in the way. Can you help me with this?
Okay. Which
is a big ask, but but when you start to ask, it becomes easier, I think.
And that's what I have actually found is it's like creating a habit. Yeah. It is, the more you practice it, the easier it is.
Yeah.
It's the first couple of times that are so hard to overcome.
Yeah.
We've got another 2 comments here. I find it difficult to do book work and to concentrate. Yeah, Declan, that is definitely an issue. I used to love reading books, and I cannot do it anymore. And it's and I try not to beat myself up about it. So I've alternated. So now I watch videos, and that works for me. That is the replacement. Not quite adequate, but still something. And Una says, I love set dancing, No dancing at the moment because of COVID. There are classes for people with Parkinson's. And this was going to the person who is 70 who isn't able to dance. And I actually think that's a very good idea. Looking to another group, not necessarily your MS group, but another group that is different from your illness. And maybe you can learn something new from them.
Definitely.
We're getting so close. It's now 45 minutes, Jonathan, and we've covered a good bit of what we hope to cover. But I'd love to have gone in a bit more depth, but as usual with these things, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to do something again in the future that will give a bit more depth.
Brilliant.
On the 16th of January, we're going to have our next episode, which is going to be about relationships that we missed. And I think that's really important to find those right relationships, whether it's family, whether it's a loved one, whether it is the relationships with your colleagues at work or social relationships. And we have mentioned it countless times in what we've discussed, Jonathan, about how important it is to have the right people to talk to support you in your work. So I think that will be very interesting.
And can I say, Robert, just to leave something as kind of a time bomb, a depth charger for people, I want people to start thinking between now and then about, it doesn't have to be sex. How can you start thinking about affectionate sexuality? How can you be affectionate to yourself and to others without having an actual sexual act? Because it's all the same system. So how do you keep the system on without going into this all or nothing kind of thinking again about having full sex versus being affectionate in a sexual way?
And I really welcome that discussion with you in January, Jonathan, because that is something that is one of my fears, is that as my illness progresses, my ability to have sex will reduce. And is there a way of compensating for that?
Exactly.
Perhaps. I have to thank Aoife Kerwin for helping to set this up, and for Aidan Larkin and the MS Society. I think this series has been really fantastic, an eye-opener for me, and I've very much enjoyed the contributions of each one of the panelists. And Jonathan, I look forward to chatting to you again in January, and I hope everybody has a fantastic Christmas and that everything goes very well for everybody. Thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye.